We are looking at these visuals of Prime Minister Narendra Modi with a hand over the shoulder of Volodymyr Zelenskyy. This is in support and solidarity, but clearly a symbolism there that India stands with Ukraine. Remember, as Gaurav is telling us, defense will be a focus. He's been getting us ground reports. And it was fascinating that Ukrainian artists are learning traditional art form and for years now with regard to India. And that's the kind of influence and impact Indians have been able to make with the Ukrainian population as well. But of course, politically, remember, India will have to play a more balancing shot here when it comes to taking a side in the war. You're looking at what clearly, remember, there's a reason you don't see smiles between the two leaders. There's a war going on, people who have lost their life, and that's what Volodymyr Zelenskyy appears to be showing to the Prime Minister, to know so that India knows thereby of what has really unfolded across the country in Ukraine ever since 2022, where and at a time when the war is refusing to die down. Prime Minister Modi also visited the Gandhi statue. This is in the heart of Kyiv. That was inaugurated in 2020. It was as part of the 150-year celebrations on the birth of the father of the nation, as we call Mahatma Gandhi. So there have been, of course, a scheduled itinerary. Indian diaspora meeting has been on the itinerary as well. But the schedule will be also, I must add here, apart from all of this, Prime Minister Modi is expected to present a Bhishma Cube. It will be like a mobile hospital that's been designed for disaster management. It's been developed in India, but it will be to add and send to Ukraine, specifically at a time when a lot of their medical facilities have been hit due to the bombings and more from the war. We'll try and go across to Gaurav Sawant in just a short while. He's on the ground, remember, but there's a lot of heightened security measures that are being taken to ensure that everything is checked and cross-checked and verified, and that's one of the reasons that we are cooperating with the security on the ground as well. And therefore, what you see on this screen, remember, hasn't come after years of distance. There have been regular interactions, whether it was the G7 or it was the COP26. Zelenskyy and Modi have been meeting over the past few years despite the war. Zelenskyy, of course, intends to reach out more than the Western nations to other countries as well for support, and that against Russia. At least it's important for the Indian Prime Minister to be on the ground and to understand about what is really happening at a time. You heard the Indian diaspora, or Indians who've been living in Ukraine for years, saying how they're used to the sirens now. And when that siren comes, how they need to rush to a safer location. So that's what Ukraine, even Kyiv right now, has been about for the past 2 to 3 years. We'll, in just a short while, play some of the visuals of the interactions about and from the Ukrainian population. But amid all of this, remember, while the cultural aspect aside, these are heartbreaking visuals as well. For anyone leading a country, to show to their contemporaries what is the situation on the ground, what they are dealing with. And Prime Minister Modi to not just do it, remember, via a video message, but to land in Kyiv. And with this support, stand with him, is also about sending a message of support and solidarity. This is the latest image that has come in about Volodymyr Zelenskyy and Prime Minister Modi. Remember that Zelenskyy, not even about 50 years of age, a fairly new politician, so to say, compared to Prime Minister Modi, who's had decades of experience in politics and of leading a state and a country, and therefore to reach out to a young president of the country and to stand with him. There's a hug that happened, a handshake, and then this visual, very important, remember, look at the background. In the foreground, you have a Prime Minister of India putting his hand over the shoulder of President Volodymyr Zelenskyy of Ukraine. And in the foreground, we saw the ravaged areas, the buildings that have been bombed. And you see from the expressions of Zelenskyy, very clear that he's also sending out a message that all is not good right now there in Ukraine. So more and more images that are coming in. Remember, for Volodymyr Zelenskyy also, there's a lot of pressure internally of why shouldn't there be an end to the war right away? Because there are more and more people who are dying, young and old. And that's one of the reasons that there have been a lot of questions. However, there have been support as well, that if this time they do not stand their guard and ensure that their territories are not invaded further, that Russia needs to be sent that message from Ukraine. So for now, Volodymyr Zelenskyy meeting Prime Minister Modi, we see the candles that have been lit, and there appears to be an official with the team, with Prime Minister Modi and President Zelenskyy to explain further what has happened in the past 2 to 3 years since the war broke out. So clearly a heartwarming image. There are more and more visuals as are coming. We'll put that on our screens right now. But this meeting was a highlight. Of course, there will be a lot of important issues that will be discussed, specifically, let's say, on defense, on medical facilities. And I say medical facilities specifically because there are thousands of Indian students who are studying in Ukraine. Many of them had to be evacuated during the war by India. And India did that not just for Indian, but also Bangladeshi and Pakistani students. But medical facilities have been of prime importance for Ukraine. One, facilities that have been hit because of the war after the Russian invasion, but also because Indian students are studying there, it is imperative that Prime Minister Modi and Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelenskyy are also going to be on the same page when it comes to ensuring that the situation improves. But while many are speculating and focusing of whether India can become a peacemaker in this war. Can India at all be able to use this leverage, which is that it is a friend and ally to both? That can it sit together, or at least have the teams on one table? If not Putin and Zelenskyy directly, the diplomats, the delegations can come in on the same page. And that can bring an end to the war. At least there has to be a ceasefire for a period, dialogue and discussion. Eventually, after all, remember, Ukraine and Russia, once USSR, now sharing borders, will have to find some truce so that people who are losing their life, that comes to an end. I reiterate, this is a historic visit as Prime Minister Modi arriving in Kyiv, holding talks with President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. The historic visit of an Indian Prime Minister, and in 30 years, and that is ever since Ukraine and India has developed a diplomatic official relations as two nations. He's in Kyiv. He got alighted from a train from Poland when he ventured and entered into Ukrainian city in Kyiv, received with a namaste from the Ukrainian diplomats and the armed forces representation and deployment that we have there in Ukraine, and of course then the Indian diaspora's Vande Mataram, Bharat Mata ki Jai and Jai Hind, and also Jai Shri Ram sloganeering that was heard. But remember, this visit, why is it even more important? Prime Minister Modi's visit to Ukraine comes just weeks after there was a trip to Moscow, and that is where he held talks with Russia's Vladimir Putin. And therefore, now that a visit has come to Ukraine, it is a symbolism very clearly that both our friends, both our allies, what can be a way out to possibly sit on the table and end this war. But because India has been a historical ally to Russia, but has also maintained close economic and diplomatic ties, not just with Moscow, but also with Kyiv. With Russia, remember, our bilateral trade reached a historic high last year. And at a time when Western nations were putting immense pressure to India to take a step back, not be friendly anymore with Russia, India said, we will not go by how the Western nations dictate to us.